And he beats the heck out of me and gets the next 8 takedowns. And after he got the 8th one, finally goes, "Don't poke the bear." So that's what I said to Steiner. Don't poke the bear.
This is the Full Tilt Podcast with Hatch.
All right, welcome everyone to, actually this is my second podcast. And I've been super excited to get this guy on the mic and get him in a room and just chat with him. The one, the only, the legendary, 2-time national champ, Olympic gold medalist, the great one himself, Randy Lewis.
Well, thank you very much, Mike.
How we doing?
Good.
Been friends with him for a while. Love this guy. Literally one of my favorite people in wrestling. And I'm so not only fortunate just to have him as a friend, but also to have him here because, I would love to see a storytelling competition between you and Royce. I think that would probably that'd be better than a takedown tournament. That would be. It would be
exciting.
It would be.
High scoring.
It'd be high scoring for sure. I think we might have to make that happen in the future. But this podcast is a little bit different. Obviously, we're primarily just storytelling and just instead of what it took to get to this level, that type of stuff. And I'm sure we might get into a little bit of that.
Oh, sure.
But we'll get into a little bit of your career right out the jump. I mean, your high school career and Pee Wee career. I would just take us through day one of wrestling, and then just we'll just kind of go organically through that.
So day one of wrestling for me.
Yeah.
Well, I started wrestling in 5th grade, and my first year I won the regionals, and then I remember going to the state tournament, and there's at the state tournament, the first match was against a guy I had named Dan Blythe, and he had got second the year before. This was my first tournament, and I was thinking, wow, this guy got second in state the year before. And I said, "Dad, this guy got second in state." And I said, well, ask him how many pull-ups he could do. And I had set the school record with 18 pull-ups. And so I asked him how many pull-ups he could do, and I could do 18, and he could do 16. I said, I'm stronger than him, so I can beat him. And that gave me the belief that I was going to win. And then they said, what if he was back at my regional and I didn't beat him? I wouldn't be regional champion. What if he lived back? My dad told me this. What if he lived at Meadowbrook School in Rapid City and you couldn't beat him? You wouldn't be the school champion. I said, well, I was going to be my school champion. I said, what if he lived right next door to you and you couldn't beat him? I said, then I wouldn't be the toughest kid on my block, and I know I'm the toughest kid on my block. So there's a guy that wrote a book about me now, and the title is Randy Lewis, the toughest kid on the block. And so then everybody that I wrestled that year, I had 5 matches, and I didn't hardly know any rules of wrestling. I just double-legged the guy right away. I shot in, I hung on, I wouldn't let go, and I got penalized like 1 point almost every match for locking hands or choking. I wouldn't let go, and I won every match 4-1 or 4-2 or 4-3. Depending on how many penalty points I got. But I got the takedown every period. There were 2 2-minute periods, and they'd blow the whistle, and I'd just dive in and grab a leg, either a single or double, and I would not let go, and I kept pulling in until I got the takedown. And then if they were reversing me, I'd choke them or lock the hands, and I wouldn't let them get go. But I ended up winning state that first time, and then after that, I went to a wrestling camp the next summer and got a lot better because I learned from Terry McCann, who was a 2-time national champion, Olympic champion for the University of Iowa. And he happened to be, Myron Roderick had a camp in South Dakota in the Black Hills. So then after that, I actually learned how to wrestle, and I kept getting better and better. And by my, I won 5 out of 7 AAU age group national tournaments by the time I was a sophomore in high school. And at that time, I weighed 98 pounds, and my sophomore in high school, my goal was I had won my closest match at the national age group tournament that I wrestled at 80 pounds, at 90 pounds the year before. My closest match was 8 points. So I set the goal my sophomore year to beat everybody the whole year by 8 points or more. And in my 12th match of the year, it was a tournament, and I wrestled the guy. I was ranked number 1 in the state, and because of all my AAU age group titles. And the guy that was a guy named Phil Hammond was a year older than me, and he cut down from 120 pounds down to 98, and he was big and strong, and I was scared when I was thinking, geez, he's ranked number 2, and he looks bigger and stronger than me. But then I thought, well, if I can't beat him, I'm not going to be the toughest kid on my block. And I went out there and got ahead 11-0 and pinned him in the first period, and then I realized, wow, I think if I just pin the guy that's ranked 2nd in state, I set my new goal was to pin everybody the whole year, and that's what I did. I went 29-0 with 29 pins and only went into the 3rd period 3 times the whole year.
Jesus.
And then I pinned my first 16 guys my junior year, so I set the national record with 45 consecutive pins in high school. And so then by winning a bunch of AAU national titles and pinning everybody, and I started getting looking at by coaches calling me, and Dan Gable. That was it was something to have Dan Gable come visit you when you're.
What was it? What was that like? I mean, what was the recruiting visit back then?
Well, Dan Gable was my hero,
yeah,
you know,
of course.
And then all these other coaches and all the top 6 coaches in the country all came to visit me and watch me wrestle, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
so Dan Gable walks into your house.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is your hero.
I
I
showed Gable the wrestling shoes that I had him sign when I was in 8th grade. I went to a camp that he worked at, and that it was a Myron Roderick camp, and it was in Utah, and I had Gable sign my shoes. And then, you know, what's funny is that when I first heard about Dan Gable, and I got to tell you this story, and it's in my book, but it's like I first heard of Dan Gable, and somebody said I was in 7th grade and I'd won my 2nd AAU national title age group, and I was 65-0. I'd never lost a match, and somebody told me Dan Gable. This is 1972. Somebody just told me Dan Gable just won the Olympics, and nobody scored a point on him in 9 matches, and it was like a high school kid that told me it. And I looked up and I said, well, if I was as big as him, I could beat him. I said, 19 years later, I was finally as big as Dan Gable, and I found out I was wrong. And I tell this story, and this is true. I go, so finally, Dan Gable won the Olympics at 149.5 pounds, and 19 years later, which was 1991, I finally moved up to 149 pounds, and I weighed about 160, and I wrestled in a dual meet against the defending world champ from Russia at 149.5 pounds, and I was ahead of them 13-4, and I pinned him. I beat the heck out and put him on his back about three or four times and pinned him. So I thought, I just pinned the Russian world champ at 149 pounds. And so then the next week I'm in practice and I see this old guy with a bad comb over. Turns out he was Dan Gable. And I go, hey, Gable, you got a partner today? And he says, yeah, I'll go with you. And I said, okay. So Gable likes to warm up for about 45 minutes. And I sit down and I go, and I didn't like to warm up. I'm just ready to go, you know. And so I go, Gable, come when you're done warming up. And he warmed up for about 45 minutes, and he's soaking us, but he's probably already lost 4 pounds soaked up. And then I go, okay. So I go, let's shake hands. I go, shake hands. I go, say 1, 2, 3, go. And Gable goes, 1, 2, 3, go. And I jumped across, and I hit like a Steven Seagal headlock, and I threw Gable right on his back in about less than 2 seconds. And then he's on his back for about 3 or 4 seconds, and he bridges off, and he gets on top of me, and he cranks my right arm. He gets on top, and he's cranking me over to my back. And I'm going to my back, and he'd get back points. And then he'd do it again and again. And he stayed on top of me for about 15 minutes and kept turning me about like 15 times, and I get up, and all of a sudden, I feel like in a Monty Python movie where they cut his shoulder off with a sword. I don't know if you guys nowadays remember that, but remember he got both his arms and both his legs cut off and said, okay, we'll call it a draw. So then Gable takes me down again, and he gets on the other side, and he cranks on my left arm for about 15, 20 minutes. So we've been wrestling for about a half hour, and I get up, I can't move either of my arms. And I feel like I'm barely, and I'm totally exhausted. My neck hurts, and I said I can't go anymore. You know, I felt like practice is over. So I'm sitting down, and then Mark Johnson, who's our assistant coach, and he comes over, but he was wrestling some of this, so he wasn't watching. He goes, Lubu, how'd you do with Gable? I go, oh, he beat me like 50-5. And Mark Johnson goes, oh, no way, you're exaggerating. I say, okay. It was 50-4.
I could totally relate with that.
Yeah.
I was my 5 years that I was in Iowa. I probably wrestled him more than anybody on the team.
Gable.
He was at that age, right? Where he wasn't going to wrestle Lincoln every day. I mean, he was going to wrestle a guy like me. Back up.
Yes,
I was a little smaller, and he said it was absolute torture. I get it. I 100% get it. But you guys had to have some other battles in the room, though. Is that the only time, or no more?
Oh, yeah, I had all sorts of other battles with other guys. You know, what's funny is like my freshman year, I got second in the country at 126, and both our 118-pounders, Dan Glenn and Mark Misnick, both of them could beat me in practice. They beat the heck out of me every time I wrestled with one of them, and I thought they were wrestling off against each other. And I thought that whoever lost that was going to move up to 126 and beat me out. But I was pinning. I was like 30-6 with 4 of my losses to Mike Land, and I only lost to one other college match the whole year besides the 4 to Mike Land. And I was smoking everybody. So Gable's he wasn't going to let them come up because I was pinning everybody except for Mike Land, who beat me 4 times. And you know, I look back. I go, hey, you know what? If we wrestled 4 more, he'd have been 8-0 against him. He was a man, and I was a boy. But then after that, I ended up beating him 5 out of 6 times. So I'm 5-5 against. I've got, you know, what's funny is like back in my career, I've got 4 different guys that I'm 5-5 against.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's besides Mike Land? Who?
Tim Szewski.
Okay.
Ricky Delegata.
Wow.
And let's see. Leroy Smith.
Oh, Leroy Smith.
Yeah.
Wow. Now you wrestled Leroy and John.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
That's interesting.
Yes, and I will tell you this: I remember first time I wrestled John Smith in 1988. I came on Olympic trials, and I said, and we that was my first time. I had pretty much just partied for 3.5 years. But I got in real good shape in 1988 and wrestled John Smith, and at the AAU Nationals, which didn't mean anything. He ended up beating me 10-8, and I walked off, and I just said, wow, I just wrestled the best match of my life, and I lost. And then I beat him the next time we wrestled, and but that was in the Olympic trials in Topeka.
Yeah, because you guys wrestled in the finals.
We wrestled. Right? I wrestled John Smith 4 times that year, and I led in every match, and he led in every match. And I put him on his back in every match, and he put me on my back in every match. We had some wild back and forth matches. And before I got hurt and blew my knee out in the second match of a 2 out of 3, I was ahead 4-3. And over 3.5 matches, I totaled it up that he had outscored me 26-24.
Oh my goodness!
So we had a lot of action in our matches. And my matches with Leroy and with Darryl Burley were similar. So
Well, you just have a lot of action in general. I mean, your matches.
Yeah.
I mean, just you're known for your wild style, for your point scoring, pinning. I mean, you were just telling me. I mean, you still have the highest scoring. NCAA.
I have the highest scoring NCAA finals match of all time. I still do. It was 20-14 against John Azevedo from Cal State Bakersfield, and both of us made the Olympic team the next year. That in 1980, he made it at 126, and I moved up to 136. And John Azevedo, who I beat 20-14, He was 120 wins and 2 losses in his 3-year college career for Cal State Bakersfield. So
Yeah,
I had some good people that I got to wrestle, and
absolutely.
I kept track of how many guys I've wrestled. 26 guys that have placed first, second, or third in the Olympics or the Worlds.
Wow.
And I've beat 23 of them, and I put all 26 on their back. And I've wrestled 24 NCAA champs, and I beat 21 of them. And the only one that I never got back points against was John Azevedo, and I beat him 20-14.
No kidding. 20-14 with no back points.
No back points. No
Oh, my
back points.
goodness.
And that's when there were only 2 points for takedowns, not 3 like today.
God. But you were also scoring like this at the Olympic level.
Oh, yeah.
You got that record there, too.
Yeah, in the Olympics, I tech falled all 5 guys, and my gold medal match was 24-11, and that's the highest scoring gold medal match of all time.
24-11.
Yeah, and that was tech fall because it was only
That's crazy.
Only 4.5 minutes.
That's literally unheard of these days.
Yeah.
Having that many points. But I just remember, because obviously you're one of my childhood heroes. I remember watching it. It was so much fun watching you wrestle. I'm like, oh no, what did he do? And then all of a sudden now, boom, 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 boom.
When I went to the NCAAs and the Olympics, my goal was to pin everybody and to get voted outstanding wrestler and most exciting wrestler every time I wrestled. So.
Wow. So
it was fun.
Out of all those, you said you got those 4 guys that you were a 5-5 against. Who would you consider back, whether it's high school, college, international, everything, your toughest opponent you've ever had, with the exception of Gable, who broke both your arms?
The best guy I ever wrestled was John Smith.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And there was
Yeah. Now, what was so different about him as compared to the other guys? You obviously wrestled just a ton of legends. So what was different about
John
that?
Smith won 6 straight World Olympic titles, and he was the only one who could really finish on me at all. Mm-hmm. People got my leg. I called it the impossible leg, and the other leg's the nearly impossible leg. And Stan Desick taught me that. Stan Desick was a coach of mine when I wrestled in the World Championships when I was a freshman. I made the world team my freshman year. And Stan Desick, when he wrestled, he got a bronze medal in the 76 Olympics and then won the world title in 77. And he did camps, and he'd show counters to the move, and there was counters to score, not to not score. And he said, this is my impossible leg, and this is my nearly impossible leg. So I learned that from him. So I'm going to credit him for that.
But it's funny though, because I remember when I was in Iowa. You were around. You'd come around and you'd come in the room and just you'd grab a hold of so and so and I remember you talking just specifically Brands. You want the impossible leg? You want the nearly impossible leg? And I'm like, wait a second. What did he just say? What did he just say to Terry Brands? Terry Brands is just a dude that used to hang 100 points on me in a practice, and he's telling him, "What you never going to? What are we doing here?"
I remember. I'll tell a story about Terry Brands. Okay, now the Brands boys. I will tell you this. They were freshmen, just true freshmen when I was at my best at 130 in 1988. I think that they graduated high school in '87, but. They would attack and attack. Nobody attacked harder. Barry Davis is the only one. He was like them. Barry Davis and Tom and Terry Brands. Well, first of all, I was 15 pounds bigger than him. So I'm a full weight class higher than him, full freestyle weight class higher than him. But they would wrestle me. Lewis got a partner like every day, and they'd shoot on me 100 times, 200 times. They'd shoot every 5 seconds. Nobody else would shoot on me very much because they didn't like shooting and getting my impossible leg. But the Brands, they kept doing it. And I remember Terry Brands one time, he kept shooting. I caught my right side turning, and I kept whipped him over. And he goes, he said a word that might be a cuss word.
No, really?
Probably was. How many so-and-so times can I get hit with the same so-and-so move? And I'd say, And I said to him, this is when he was just a true freshman. He was still wrestling at 126, and I'm clear up. I weigh about 158 or so. But I kept hitting. I'd say at least 10 more. That's what I said to him. I go, it turns out I was correct.
It's funny because we were talking on the way over here, and I remember specifically. I mean, we'd be out in the Ped Mall, afterwards, and you'd be in town. And Terry was always he was the driver at specific times of the year because he wouldn't. They don't drink.
Yeah,
and I remember
Tom and Terry Brands don't drink, and I'd like to have a few libations back then. And they'd be. I'd bring them out with me. They were my chauffeur.
Yeah. I remember being out one night, and we were in the Ped Mall, and we all came out. Obviously, it was probably the Union Sports column. You're like, "Hey, Brands, which leg you want? Let's go. Best of 5 takedowns." It's like 3 in the morning.
Yeah. And I'd still win most of the time, even at 3 in the morning when I'd had several libations and they'd had 0 libations. And I remember one time, there's a time when we had, Gable used to have practices on home football games. So like if the football game was at 1:00 on Saturday afternoon, we had a home game, we'd have wrestling practice at like 9:00 or 10:00 in the morning, and we'd get 1,000 people come in and watch practice. And Royce and I, my roommate Royce Alger and I, were smart enough to realize that if all those extra people in there are going to bring extra body heat, so the room's going to be real warm tomorrow, so we're going to sweat more than usual. So we got to make sure that we'd go out the night before to make sure that we were fully hydrated. And we went to the the field house bar, not the field house where we wrestled at the time, but the field house bar. And
strictly hydration purposes.
Sure, for hydration purposes. And we drank. We spent. We got there about like 8:00 and we stayed there drinking, I put in quote, Diet Pepsis till 2:00 in the morning. I go, then the next day we had practice and I walk into practice and I see Tom Brands and he says, "Lewis, got a partner?" And I said, "I do now." And so then we wrestled. And Brands was, I had 15 pounds on him, and I think he'd only won 1 national title at the time. But, he kept shooting in on me, and he'd shoot, I score. He'd shoot, I score. And he kept shooting, and I kept scoring. He kept shooting, and I kept scoring. And then finally, after about 45 minutes, I didn't feel quite so hydrated. And we got in a scramble for about 45 seconds, and he almost took me down. I almost took him down. And finally, I got one last takedown. I said, "I've never been more exhausted in my life." And I got the takedown, and I said I was so dead tired that I just rolled off him, and I lay on my back, and I lay there, and I called time out. And Tom Brands jumped up over me, stood up, and his knees are bent, and his fists are clenched, and he's pissed. And he goes, "Lewis, that's effing BS. We don't call timeouts in Iowa." I said, as I lay there on my back.
In front of 1,000 people.
In front of 1,000 people. On my deathbed. I could not move. I uttered these soon-to-be immortal words. I said, "Brands, if you just got done scoring 100 points, you'd be tired too." That was a good one.
and Tom Brands, being the fiery person that he is, what did he do?
He smiled and said, "F you," and I got my timeout. But practice was over. I had enough.
Oh my God! That is classic. I mean, I've heard that story before, and it's just so funny. It gets funnier every time, and it's those guys. That's just hilarious. But so like I said, your matches with John Smith, it was funny because I was talking to Dresser, and some of my favorite Randy Lewis stories, honestly.
What's that?
I was talking to Kevin Dresser.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite Randy Lewis stories, honestly, come from Kevin Dresser, who's got a whole different perspective on all these stories. But he was telling me he was coaching you in the corner of your Olympic of your Olympic trials match with John Smith. You looked in the camera and said something.
Okay, no, this is in the semifinals in 1988. In the semifinals of the Olympic trials, I had Jim Jordan, who's now the congressman.
Yeah.
Well, Jim Jordan was the 2-time NCAA champion from Wisconsin, and he was the 4-time state champ from Ohio in high school, and he beat John Smith in the NCAA finals. So John Smith, when John Smith was a sophomore, Jim Jordan beat him in the NCAA finals, and then. So that was, and Jim Jordan also wrestled Greg Randall in the finals. So he beat Greg Randall and then John Smith. And so I'm wrestling Jim Jordan in the semifinals of the Olympic trials. And at the end of the first period, I'm ahead 3-0. And we're in Topeka, Kansas. And this TV camera comes up on wheels. It's about this big around. And they get about closer than we are. It's about 2 feet away from us. And Mark Johnson and Kevin Dresser are coaching. This is in freestyle. Then you got a 3-minute period. Then I don't know if it's 30 seconds or a minute.
Yeah,
it's varied. Whether I think it's 30 seconds or a minute. And all of a sudden, this TV camera comes up, and they're getting right in my face. And we're in Topeka, Kansas. And I look at the TV camera like this. I just want to say one thing to all you single girls in Topeka. My name's Randy Lewis. I'm single. I'm available, and I'm in room 349 at a holiday tonight. And I blew him a kiss. And Kevin Dresser and Mark Johnson, they're going like this. I winked at him. I go, I got this. And then I went out and I beat Jim Jordan 8-0. And then the next night, I wrestled John Smith in the Olympic trials ranking tournament, and I beat him 7-5. I put him on his back 3 times. Yeah, and so that's how I roll.
That's how I roll. I love it. Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah, I mean, who does that, Lubu? Who does that?
Very few people.
Yeah. Who does that?
I don't know anybody else who's ever said that.
Who does that?
In the middle of the semifinals Olympic trials against Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
By the way, I am 5-0 against Jim Jordan. So if he runs for president, I might run against him.
That would be something. a country run by Randy Lewis. That would make things very, very, very interesting. But you know what the thing is, though, is it would be. I mean, I can see you being a very diplomatic leader.
Oh,
without
sure,
question.
yeah,
you get along with everybody. That's the thing. It's crazy because, you would think that just wrestling is the ultimate competitor sport.
It is,
but at the same time,
I will tell you this about me:
you've got more friends outside of it.
Some of my best friends are the guys that have beaten me a lot. My best friends are the guys that I competed against in my weight. Ricky Delagata. It's special to me, my friendships. I've gotten to know so many people over the years, so many people from other schools, national champs at my weight and at other weights, and it's just like there's so much. Everybody knows how much it takes to do what it takes to win, and I like that. So.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. Speaking of Kevin Dresser.
Yeah.
you coached him one time, I believe, right? The UNI Open?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think your coaching career, very, very,
yes.
Your coaching career, but it's shrunk down a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. We wrestled at the UNI Open one year, and the varsity guys, Gable had the varsity guys all back on the East Coast. They had dual meets against like Penn State and Ohio State and Cornell and maybe somebody else, Lehigh or something. They had they were gone for like a week over from Wednesday to Wednesday or something. So the JV guys and the Hawkeye Wrestling Club guys were wrestling at the UNI Open. It was like December 4th or something like that, early December. And Kevin Dresser, who was who had just won his national title, and he was out of college, but he was getting ready to start his freestyle career and try and make world teams, Olympic teams. So he wrestled in it. So he was still, and this is back when guys that were out of college, you'd go to the UNI Open. Like I wrestled in it 3 times after I was out of college, and I wrestled in the Midlands 3 times after I was out of college. So you'd go to those open tournaments, and there'd be, I mean, one year my weight class at the Midlands had 5 guys in my weight class that were already NCAA champions, and 2 guys that had already got second. So it had
Really?
In the quarterfinals, you got NCAA finalists meeting each other, and runners ups, and plus that year that didn't even include Tim Szewski, who had won the Midlands 5 years in a row, and so. I mean, I was wrestling NCAA champs in the second round, like Nick Gallo and that, yeah, we had some wild matches, and I kind of lost track of what I was saying.
Yeah, but with the Midlands and the UNI Open were matches or tournaments you guys go to
Okay.
you know, when you get in competing in college. So
I was talking about the dresser thing then, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, so Kevin Dresser's wrestling in the tournament, and so I'm coaching the Hawkeye Club guys, and we weigh in at 2:00 in Iowa City. Back then, you weighed in the day before, and we weighed in before we got on the road. We got to weigh in at 2:00 in the afternoon, and then the tournament didn't start till 10:00 the next morning. Okay, so we weigh in Iowa City, and then we have meal. We had the weigh-in meals, and we had like 21 guys, and then we all drive up to UNI, and we check into our motel rooms, and we go. So we get in. We get into our motel rooms, and I say, okay, let's meet in my room for 15 minutes. And then 15 minutes, all 20 guys come in. I go, guys, we came here for 3 reasons. I go, to kick their behinds, drink their fermented beverages, and engage in religious discussions with their women. And so that night, I went out and I drank their fermented beverages, and I came back and I was rooming with Kevin Dresser, and I had a gal that was rather religious because she kept saying, "Oh God, oh God," and anyways, Kevin Dresser won the tournament the next day, and he got voted outstanding wrestler. Well, when Gable heard about my my speech to get the guys to wrestle harder, he brought me into his office to slap my wrist pretty hard. And I knew what he was going to say, and he was going to get mad at me. I said, Gable, before you say what you're going to say, I know what you're going to say to me, but before you say anything, let me ask you 2 questions. And he goes, okay. And I go, 1, did Kevin Dresser win the tournament? Yes. 2, did Kevin Dresser get voted outstanding wrestler? Gable said, yes. I said, well, maybe everybody should have roomed with me. And Gable says, get out of here. We had some fun.
Oh man, that was the thing. That was like y'all's era. You and Royce and just that was dressing. You guys, that was like known as the era of like. Not only you guys you guys worked
nuts.
Hard, played hard,
and stay hard. That
was a theme.
The motto,
right there. That was the motto. What was it like back in the day? Like, I mean, like let's take. I probably won't even get into the off season, but like during the in season,
I never had
the
off season because I was wrestling. Okay, I will tell you this. Like, I made the world team my freshman year. I made the junior world. I won the junior worlds when I was a senior in high school, and so I was wrestling. I was in great shape all the time. It was just like when all 3 years in college, my first 3 years in college in September, when I came back, I was in great shape because I just got done. I just wrestled the world championships last week or the junior worlds last week, and I was in great shape all year round. So I was in better shape. I was in as good a shape when our season started as I was at the NCAA finals when they're done. I mean, I was just a week off of wrestling in a world championship somewhere, and so.
Yeah, because I've heard like legendary stories about like during the off season, you guys are out every night.
There was no off season for me because I was like an off season, like a week off after the NCAA's, and I'm wrestling the World Cup, wrestling Russian duos, pinning
Yeah.
the Russians and things like that. And it's like, there's the book about me is called Randy Lewis, the Toughest Kid on the Block, and that's when I was a junior in college, I went over and wrestled in Tbilisi in the middle of my college season, and I missed like 2 weeks of school, and Gable said, well, how can you miss 2 weeks of school? And I said, Gable, I go, I took classes that don't take any roll. I go, I haven't gone to school for 2.5 years. The only thing I go to school for is to take the tests that they give, and we don't have any tests. And I go, so if I go to Russia for 2 weeks, I'm going to go to the same. I won't miss any more classes than I'll miss if I'm here, because I won't go to any classes during the 2 weeks that I'm here. And Gable says, well, okay, you might as well go then, because I would just take the tests and pass them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, there's a reason it took me only 4 terms to graduate from college. Nixon's, Ford's, Reagan's, and Carter's. It actually took me 11 years to graduate. And when I graduated, I had a grade point average. A grade point average of 2.02. You had to have 2.00 or higher to graduate. So at the graduation ceremony, I said I was the only one there whose blood alcohol level was higher than his GPA.
Yeah. Well, how'd you do in the Tbilisi tournament?
Tbilisi?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I went there and I got second or third, but I wrestled in Tbilisi 3 times. In all 3 years, I beat the guy that got second in it, but it's round robin and back points, and I placed like third or fourth each time, but the matches that I lost, I didn't really lose. There was a match where a guy would pick me up in the air, and I came down still standing on my feet, and they gave him 3. We're still on our feet, and he did it again. They gave him 3, and then I threw him to his back from there, and they gave me 1. So I'm behind 6-1 when I should be ahead 3-0. I mean, they really would screw you.
Yeah, they make it really difficult.
Yeah, it was very hard to win in Russia.
Yeah,
with the Russian refs, and so.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
What's your most, I guess, unique international wrestling experience? I mean, you're talking about you've been all around the world wrestling. Just what's a really super unique story about being in Russia or being, whether it's funny or not, or a little bit of comedy?
I'm not sure. I can't really think. Let me think for a second here. Let's see.
What was it like wrestling the first time overseas?
What's that?
What was it like wrestling the first time in Russia? That's where, I mean.
Well, that was my junior year, and I went there, and it was hard to. I beat everybody. I beat the Cuban that got third in the Olympics and that went on to become a 2-time world champ. Mm-hmm. I was beaten. I was beaten almost about everybody I'd wrestled, but then it was hard to win when they kept giving them points on things. And there was a match that we should have won 10-0. It wasn't so. It was other. I mean, we watched everybody got screwed over there so bad. I mean, I don't like to complain about the referees, but
it was bad. It was bad, huh?
I mean, it was very hard to win there. And then, after that, my junior year in college, my dad organized a dual. Russia would come over and wrestle in the World Cup, and then they'd have 3 dual meets afterwards against us every year. And so the Russians, and my dad organized one in Rapid City, South Dakota, my junior year in college. So then I wrestled Victor Alexiev, who's a world champ and 2-time world champion, and second and third in the world. And so we're wrestling in Rapid City, and the Rapid City Journal asked me, how are you going to do? And I said, well, and this is what the story is behind The Toughest Kid on the Block, the book that's been written about me, is that I said, well, I'm going to pin him. And my dad and somebody said, well, you're 0-5 against the Russians. Yeah, but this is in my hometown. I go, I'm not going to be wrestling the Russian. I'm going to be wrestling a guy to find out who is the toughest kid in Rapid City? Who's the toughest kid on my block? I go, if this Russian lived in the United States and I couldn't beat him, I wouldn't be an NCAA champion this year. And I said, and if he lived in South Dakota and I couldn't beat him, I wouldn't be a state champion if he was that my way. And if he lived right next door to me and I couldn't beat him, I wouldn't be the toughest kid on my block. I said, well, I'm going to tell you what, I am the toughest kid on my block, and I'm going to do, and I told this to the newspaper before the duel in Rapid City, I said, I am going to pin him. I looked up my record in high school in Rapid City, and I was 50-0 with 48 pins, and the 2 matches that I didn't pin him, I won 12-0 and 23-2, and I had those guys pinned. The ref just didn't call it. So in my mind, I was 50-0 in Rapid City with 50 pins, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not wrestling the Russian world champ. I'm wrestling the guy to find out who is the toughest kid on the block, and I am going to pin him, and that's what I told. That's what I told the Rapid City Journal, and I told the radios. And you know what happened in the match? I pinned the Russian in the first period, threw him on his back and pinned him.
Dang.
So I am the toughest kid on my block.
Yes, you are. Tell you what, they make him like that up Dakotas.
And, you know, I'm going to nail Royce on this one. Royce calls me TGO, the great one. He's nicknamed me that, okay, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
And people say, well, what do you call Royce? I said, I call Royce the second best wrestler in our house. Just so you know what to call him the next time you see him. That was good. Tough crowd.
It is a tough crowd, for sure. Nobody says that about Royce Salger. I mean, you can't say not just anybody can say that about him. You know?
I can.
You can do that. That's that Dakota in you, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a couple. We had a couple of guys on my team that were teammates of mine that were from Dakotas, the Steiner brothers.
Oh yeah.
You got
they were from North Dakota.
Yeah, they're North Dakota.
And I'd wrestle them, and we'd always talk about the Dakota title.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So I used to wrestle the Steiner boys, and I'd have them rotate in. Like I'd go out there, one takedown, and I'd stay out there till I got 21 in a row. Mm-hmm. I said, because they play blackjack up in North Dakota in the bars. They could play blackjack for like $5 a hand or something. You know, not just in casinos they had, but
in the bars,
just in bars there they had that. Wow, which I'd never seen before. Yeah. But so we talked about the Dakota title for some reason. So I wrestled the Steiner brothers for the Dakota title, and that was where I would. We'd just go one match for it, but I used to wrestle them where they'd alternate on me takedowns, and I'd stay out there with no rest, and I'd get 21 and they'd get 0. And then one time I had a late night out drinking Diet Pepsis, and I was wrestling one of the Steiners, and he was having the best day ever against me, and Leroy Smith was running the practice. And it was at the World Cup, and it was like people in between matches. And so I was just, and they go, okay, we're going to go one more match before practice over. And Terry Steiner, who was having his best day ever against me, said, Lewis, want to go this last match for the Dakota title? And I said, okay. And so then, if he wouldn't have said that, he probably would have won that last match, I think. But okay, I shook my head, and I went out there. He woke me up. Don't poke the bear. So I went out and I took him down to his back right away. I pinned him in about 15 seconds, and then I beat the heck out of him. I beat him like 40-0 in the match, and that he probably would have won if he hadn't gotten me to wrestle for the Dakota title. Yeah. And then afterwards, I had him cry. I go, Steiner, don't poke the bear. And that was when Jay Robinson did that to me one time. Jay Robinson, he was our assistant coach, and he was the one who really taught me how. Gable really helped me mentally, but Gable never showed me anything technically. Jay was the one that I did all my technical work with, and I'd wrestle him quite a bit. But Jay weighed, he made the Olympic team at 180, and I was at 136. So he beat the heck out of me, and we'd go and like 3 different times over the years, like once a year, we'd go 10 out of 10. And Jay Robinson took me down 10 out of 10 all 3 times. So he's 30-0 against me for takedowns. So then this one year we're wrestling, and so this is after I'd won the Olympics. It was like a year later, 86 or so, and I was bigger. I weighed like probably 155 or one, and all of a sudden I throw Gable. Jay goes, "Look, you want to go 10 out of 10? Go 10. See who gets out 10." And I said, "Okay." And I threw him to his back twice and pinned him, so I got the first 2. And I go, oh. Looks like Captain Robinson's getting a little old. And then Captain Robinson stood up and he kind of cut his head like this, and he gets his game face on, and he beats the heck out of me and gets the next 8 takedowns. And after he got the 8th one, finally goes, "Don't poke the bear." So that's what I said to Steiner. Don't poke the bear.
You're also known for the thumbs up.
Oh,
the
sure.
Thumbs up story. Yeah. There is somebody.
Oh, yeah.
I heard about this one. I was like, that's a Randy Lewis story all day.
This is a good.
I struck a nerve.
This is good. Okay, so Gene Mills, one of my favorite wrestlers, and he's one of the highest scoring wrestlers, and he was one of the best pinners of all time too. And he got outstanding wrestler at the NCAAs, and he won Tbilisi. And in Tbilisi, Gene Mills, he won Tbilisi, the toughest tournament in the world, and he pinned 7 guys in it. He had 8 matches.
Wow.
And he won 18-1 in the finals, and they cautioned the guy out for stalling. And that's how tough Gene Mills was. Are you kidding me? And so then, so the next year, we're in a dual meet against Syracuse. And Gene Mills is wrestling at 126 against us, and he's got Mark Trezino. And Trezino comes out and shoots a high crotch and takes him down, takes Gene Mills down, and he looks up and winks at Gable and gives him a thumbs up sign. And I'm sitting by Gable, and I go, "Gable, did he just look up and wink? Did he just give a thumbs up and wink at us?" And Gable goes, "Yeah." I go, "What the heck?" And then Gene Mills got a reversal, and he ended up beating. He cranked on Trezino the rest of the match, and he beat him 27-3. And so I'm coming up next. I'm a 34-pounder. And Mills is coming off the mat with his head down like this. And I jump right in front of him. He looks up at me and I go, and I we were pretty vicious with it. We had fun.
It was a tough crowd back then.
Yeah, we gave each other shit over everything.
No. Have at it. Have at it. Because I think when you team like him and Roy, when you team you and Royce up on people, I heard Rat Martin got a little bit of that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Who didn't? Okay, so with Steve Martin, he was. Did I tell this one yet?
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. I want to hear.
So Steve Martin, he's varsity the whole year. This is his freshman year, and he was Royce's roommate, and he was dating Royce's sister Roxanne. Okay, so that really didn't matter, other than the fact that show how close Royce was to Steve Martin.
Right.
Okay, so Steve Martin's varsity the whole year at 118. And then at the end of the year, Brad Penrith cut down from 134 to 126, forced Johnny Regan, who was our 126-pounder, to cut down to 118 and wrestle off Steve Martin for the spot. And Johnny Regan beat Steve Martin 2 matches in a row, and the second match was right before our practice on Monday. And then Gable goes, "Okay, all these varsity guys, this is the Monday of the Big Tens." And Steve Martin just got beat out in a wrestle-off against Johnny Regan. And he's sitting like right in front of Gable, like as close as we are. Gable in front of him, and I'm sitting right next to him, and Royce is on his other side, and Martin's sitting there, and he's like crying, he's like pouting, like, and Dan Gable gave everybody on the team directions on each individual. He had directions for them on what they were supposed to do for 30 minutes. After that, you're on your own. And he went through every single guy and told them what they were supposed to do for 30 minutes. Took him about 10 minutes to get through everybody. And then, okay. Anybody else got any questions? And Royce Salger goes, yeah, Gabe's. He goes, Martin wants to know what the JV's supposed to do. Oh, my God. and Martin looked up and even he laughed. He goes, oh, my God. Everybody laughed. That was so good.
That had to be, I mean, I remember my days at Iowa. And it was, and it, again, it's a tough crowd. It was a tough crowd. And then at mine, the early 90s. But I look back at you guys' era, and it would have been, for me and what I spent the majority of my college career doing from a social perspective. I would have loved to go back there just for a week, go back in time for a week, and just so who is like your lineup? Let's just say maybe your junior years, but just all your lineups. What was the best lineup that you've ever been on in Iowa?
The best lineup I've ever been on was the 1981 team.
Okay.
And so that had 118. We had Barry Davis, who became 3-time NCAA champ, 4-time All-American. But that year he was just a freshman and he ended up 7th. Okay, so but he was, and he's a 3-time World Olympic medalist. Okay, that was at 118. 126 we had Tim Riley, who was a 3-time All-American. 134 we had me, and I had been in the finals 3 times. Already made Olympic team and world team, but I was a senior. That was my year. I dislocated my elbow against Jim Gibbons and ended up 7th. 142, we had Lenny Zaleski, who was a 3-time All-American, 2-time runner-up, got beat by Andre Metzger twice in the finals. And so he was our 42-pounder. 150, we had Scott Trezino, who was who played second, and third, and he lost to Nate Carr that year in the finals. So he made the finals. He got third, second, and second. Then at 158, we had Jim Zaleski, and he was a freshman that year, and he got 5th. But then he became a 3-timer. So, and then at 167, we had Mike Deanna, who was a 4-time Big Ten champion, and I think Mike Deanna is the best wrestler who never won the NCAAs.
Really?
Because he was a 4-time Big Ten champion. He made the finals of the NCAAs twice, and all 4 years he beat the guy that won it. And the guys that beat him, he had beaten earlier. He beat Mark Chiarella, who was a 3-time champion, 3-time NCAA champion. He beat Mark Chiarella in the greatest match I've ever seen in college.
Really?
14-14 regulations and 6-4 overtime in the Big Tens. Wow. And then Chiarella pinned him in the national finals that year. And Mike, so that's how good Mike Deanna was. And he had beat Mark Schultz the year before in the dual meet, and then lost to Mark Schultz in the NCAA finals. So Mike Deanna made the finals twice and got beat by 3-timers that he had beaten earlier in the year. And then another year that he got 6th, he beat the guy that won it during the year in the duel and lost to him in overtime in the semis. So that's how good. Then at 177 and 81 we had Ed Banick. Oof. And at 190 we had Pete Bush, who was the national champ. Yeah. And at heavyweight we had Lou Banick, who was a 2-time national champ and Olympic champ. So that team had 3 guys that won the Olympics, plus Barry Davis got a silver. So we had four of those guys made the Olympic team. So that team had, between the 10 guys, we were 34 times All-Americans. The only one who was not at least a 3-time All-American was Pete Bush, and he was a national champion who was seated 3rd and 4th in the 2 years that he did not become an All-American, and that was when he didn't get to wrestle back. That's where if you got beat in the first 2 rounds, your guy had to make it to the finals for you to wrestle back.
Yeah.
And his guys, the guys that beat him, never made it to the finals.
Wow.
So we had that team in 1981, 34 times All-Americans. They were in the finals, first or second, 23 times.
Wow.
And 14 NCAA titles between the 10 guys on that team. So that was our team, and they had a lot of those guys were also on the 1983 team, and the 83 team, I mean, they might have been, they were better than the 81 team because the guys were Barry Davis and Jim Zaleski, and 3 of the went on to win their 3rd titles, or second titles, but they were. And Ed and Lou Banick were still on those teams too, and then they had Dwayne Goldman, who became a 4-time finalist. Yeah. So it was 8 of the same guys in 81 and 83. So those were 2 of the best teams that we had, and then we had another really good team in 86. We had 6 guys in the finals. And then they've had some real good teams. Gable's had some great teams.
Yeah.
And then his last year, I think, when they won it at UNI, they had 5 champs and 6 guys in the finals.
Yeah. So how's that? The 81 team that you were just talking about? How's that stack up against the rest of them?
Against what?
Against the rest of those teams that you just mentioned. How does that stack up against? What'd you say, 86? You said, obviously, Gable's last year was 97 because I graduated in 96. So how would yours stack up to that?
Well, it depends on if you put Randy Lewis healthy at the start of the year, or you put me at nationals with a bad elbow.
Right.
And so Barry Davis seed 3rd. I mean, it was a lot of those guys. It wasn't their best year, like mine. Okay, so but if you put me in there healthy, you put everybody in there healthy. But then a lot of those 6 or 7 of those guys were on the 83 team, and they won nationals themselves, like Barry Davis and Jim Zaleski. They got 5th and 7th in 81, but then they were national champs 2 years later.
True.
So the 83 team was probably better because of that, because we had everybody, 6 of those guys, and Ed and Lou Banick, they were seniors instead of sophomores.
Yeah.
So that was like 8 of the guys, a lot of the guys that we had, 7 of them, were still on the 83 team.
Wow.
So,
but from a credentials perspective, though, man, your 81 team, wow.
The 81 team had more credentials than any other team that I've ever seen, but I haven't really looked at the last 10 years to see, like, if Penn State's, how many times their guys have done it. But I mean, like, how many All-Americans they'd have, because they had a lot of national championship teams with 3 or 4 guys on it that were 3-timers or 4-time.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, geez, they got a 5-timer. You know, I mean.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, who also had a redshirt year. You know, I mean, so.
It's different. It's now it's just crazy. It's just it's crazy how things go now.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we had the 81 team was
I mean, just
they were
4 Olympic gold medalists. That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wow. I guess I never really analyzed it like that. That's incredible. It's incredible. Like how, I mean, and still to this day, I mean, I remember the first time that
we had both Ed and Lou Banick and Randy Lewis on the same team. That's a lot of action. That's a lot of pins.
I remember.
Those were fun matches to watch.
I
remember.
Ed
Banick and I would make bets. I mean, before the Olympic finals, we're saying who's going to hit the most 4-point throws and who's going to pin them fastest or score the most points. I mean, with Ed Banick and I, it wasn't just we're going to win. We're going to hit the best moves for the fans. Ed Banick and I love to go out there and hit the biggest throws and score the most points, and it was we'd argue about it. And I remember Ed Banick spoke to the press. They had, before our first duel in the fall of 1980, but it was the season of 1901. So it was my senior year and Ed Banick's sophomore year. And he gets up there and he tells the people, what my goals this year are to pin everybody I wrestle. And then my sophomore year, I want to pin everybody I wrestle in the first or second period. And my senior year, I want to pin everybody I wrestle in the first period. That's what Ed Banick tells the media. And afterwards, I'm speaking after him. And I go, well, my goal is to pin more guys than Ed Banick this year, so I guess my goal is to pin everybody I wrestle, plus I need to draw a pigtail match at the NCAA. So that was my goal my senior year.
Oh my God.
It was hard to keep up with Ed Banick and his goals. Okay.
Man, cause I remember being a little kid. My parents used to bring me and my brother to the field house, and it was just it would have been crazy, like, because just Carver Hawk Arena is amazing.
Yeah,
just the way it's. I mean, just the setup, and you could tell that literally Coach Gable had a hand in like that whole thing. But just the atmosphere you get in the Carver Hawk Arena with that many people. But you put your guys' team in like an arena like that with a full stands, that the way that you guys used to light up the scoreboard. Oh my goodness, wrestling would be the most popular sport in the world. Yeah, it was incredible. I just remember as a youngster, it was amazing.
Lincoln McIlravy made the statement that if everybody wrestled like Randy Lewis, wrestling would be more popular than basketball.
Yeah, there's no question. Lincoln McIlravy's a smart guy. He's from South Dakota, so there we go.
Exactly.
I think that's how to do it.
And you know what's funny? Okay.
Lincoln's amazing. He's awesome. He's a great teammate.
Yes, he is. And Lincoln McIlravy won his match in the NCAA Finals 16-15 his freshman year. That is the second highest scoring match in the NCAA Finals of all time. So South Dakota has the highest scoring NCAA Finals match of all time and the second highest scoring Finals match of all time.
Lincoln was, he was awesome. Yeah, he was, and he was such a great person.
Yes,
I mean, because he came in the second it's my second year at Iowa. And he was such a great person. I remember that I think I wrestled him twice. And I wrestled him, Coach Gable used to bring in the partners, like the JV partners for those little 20-second go workouts or whatever he had. Yeah. And I was Lincoln's partner for that as a true freshman. And I knew I was coming. He goes, yeah, you're going to go with McIlravy today. And I was like, this is going to be fun. It was awful. He just lit me up like a Christmas tree. And I tell you what, his scoring ability was so, it was just, he could, I mean, he had everything, strength, speed. Yeah. He could wrestle low singles. He could wrestle in underhooks. He was incredible. Yeah. And plus, and that's not, and that has nothing, it doesn't even compare to how good a person he is. He's just a great person. Yeah. I'd love to have him as a teammate. It was so cool. So cool. But man, Gable, his teams, it was just awesome. What was your most memorable, toughest Gable workout that he's ever put you through?
Well, it was the
one.
Hey, Gable, you want to go? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, but no. Okay, there's another one. Okay, when I was a junior in college. Okay, after I pinned Alexiev, the Russian world champ, and I'm world class 136 pounder. Gable's at 149, so that's just one weight up. He's 13 pounds bigger than me. He probably was about 10 pounds bigger than me, but Gable could still beat Ed Banick when Ed Banick went in the room. Jeez. You know, and
really, I mean, that's 100% true.
That's true.
Wow.
If they would have wrestled a match, I would have, and I had to bet on them, I would bet on Gable.
Really?
Even the year Ed Banick won. Okay, but Ed's different in when it counts. But anyways, in the room, and I watched Gable going even with Chris Campbell when Chris Campbell was world champ at 198, and Gable was very good at wrestling bigger people, and I was smaller than him, but he hardly ever wrestled me. But I remember wrestling with him one time, and he got on top. I mean, I couldn't get away. Gable's the only guy I couldn't get away from because I was really good underneath. But he could ride me and turn me, and so we wrestled one day, and this is my junior year in college, and so that year I made the Olympic team at 136, and I go, Gable, let's. I bet him a Mountain Dew, because we had Mountain Dews back then in our office. I bet him a Mountain Dew that I could get one takedown on him. I said, but you can't ride me the whole day. We got to keep going. So we went like 50 takedowns, and he got all 50. I'm like, God. So I guess I was wrong when I first made my assessment about Dan Gable. If I was as big as when I was in 7th grade, 19 years, if I was as big as Dan Gable, I could beat him. 19 years later, I was as big as Dan Gable, and I found out I was wrong.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I mean, again, I was wrestling him when he was. I mean, way past that. I couldn't. Right, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine. Wow. So your toughest teammate. Toughest teammate that you wrestled back in the day, like your toughest Iowa teammate that you would have daily battles with back in the day.
Well, Steve Hunt when I was a freshman, but I only wrestled him like twice because he beat me so bad. He'd ride me and stretch me out, but he was a fifth-year senior, and then I was a true freshman, and he was a lot bigger than me. Mm-hmm. But Lenny Zaleski used to really give when he was his junior and senior years, he could go even with me. He beat Andre Metzger once during the year, and he was seeded first twice. So and he was just one weight above me. But Lenny was in great shape, and we had some really good goes. Yeah. And when I was a freshman, Dan Glenn and Mark Misnick were 118 pounders, and I got second that year, but I couldn't beat either one of them.
Really?
Yeah, they were at 118. And, it's funny. It's like, okay, I wrestled there was a guy that I wrestled, and I beat him like fucking 15 points at 126. Then he cut down to 118. And Dan Glenn or Misnick could beat him like 9-8 or 9-5. They'd beat him by a couple points, and I'd beat him by 20. So I had a style that, like, if I could beat you, I could rack up some points.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, okay – but the people, I had some big, my first 2 or 3 years in college, I had a lot of big moves that if you wrestled me enough, you could figure out how to do it. And that's what Dan Glenn, that's why I had guys in the roommate that could beat me. But the guys that never saw it, this is back before you didn't have videos of everybody. So I had some big moves that I hit a lot of people with that nobody knew I had. Nobody had scouting reports on Randy Lewis. Right. Very few. That was what was, like when I wrestled Russians in the World Championship. Now everybody wrestles everybody, and they've studied films of them for hours. You know, but back then nobody had. Like every time I'd wrestle a Russian, I'd never seen him wrestle before. Yeah. They'd never seen me. And so other than that tournament, so. You knew if a guy had 1 or 2 big moves, but I had a lot of different stuff.
Right.
But like I had some people that would figure it out. So like my freshman year, just to make varsity, I had to have a wrestle off, and I only I can't remember what his name was, but he was just a one-time state champ from Iowa, and I beat him 13-12. And then this is a thing about Gable getting me mentally ready to wrestle. So our first wrestling thing was a 3-team. We'd have three. We'd go wrestle in Minnesota, and it was a tournament. But there was 4 teams that would put their first 2 guys. Each team had 2 teams, so there was 8 guys in a weight class, and so. Iowa had 2 teams at every weight. Minnesota had 2 teams at every weight, and like North Dakota State had 2 teams, two guys at each weight, and another school, I can't remember what it was. But anyways, I beat our guy, I can't remember. I beat our guy 13-12 in the wrestle-off, and he got beat 17-1 by the Minnesota kid. And the Minnesota kid was a freshman, so he just beat a guy 17-1 that I beat 13-12 a week before that.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm thinking, oh, God. And Gable sees that, and he goes, and Gable tells me, okay, and let's see, the guy, I'm bad at names now. Mm-hmm. I can't remember, but the guy ended up transferring to Nebraska and became a 3-time All-American there. And but anyways, so he beats the guy from Minnesota. He beats our guy 17-1 that I beat 13-12. And Gable tells me, oh, this guy, he says I should have recruited him to Iowa instead of you. And so I get mad. Gable gets, he's talking some shit, you know. So I get all psyched up, and I go out there and against the Minnesota kid that was from Nebraska in high school, but I can't. And he ended up being a 3-time All-American for him. But I got all excited. I got real fired up, and I went out there and had me 11-1 the first period and pinned him. Oh, because that's the way it was, you know. And it's just like I had a way of just going out there and pinning people, getting and beating them, putting up all sorts of points, and I couldn't beat anybody in the room. My freshman year, I can't wait to wrestle a match because I can't get a takedown in the room. Oh man!
But it's not like any other room. The Iowa room is just. It's just. It's
brutal. And that was what, yet everybody in there, except for Gable, had somebody else in the room that could kick his ass.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not every time, but someday you go in there. There's somebody in there that can whip on you.
Yeah.
Even if you're Chris Campbell, even if you're Randy Lewis after winning the gold, you know. And so it was,
It was wild because, like I said, I remember being in that room and then I just seeing, just looking at, wow. He still gets a butt whooping from the older guys that come back and just they just school him.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow, goodness.
Mark Ironside, when he won his second national title and won what's the trophy called?
Hodge.
The Hodge Trophy.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we had 6 guys in the room that could beat him in the room on any given day. I mean, I'm not saying that he's in there. We had the Steiners and the Brands and
Lincoln.
What's that?
Lincoln.
Lincoln wasn't there. Was he there?
Yeah, he was there at that time.
Oh, well, Lincoln was too big for him. I mean, we had guys at his weight.
Oh, yeah.
So we had Tom and Terry Brands. Yep. We had Terry and Troy Steiner were still both in the room. Mm-hmm. And then we had...
Zadok was still there. Zadok.
Yeah. Yeah. And they... So...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a brutal... Yeah, a brutal room and
who was stories. Who was the guy... McGinnis. Yeah, McGinnis could beat him too. You know, McGinnis won nationals that year at 142.
Yeah. I tell you what, McGinnis, he might have been the best wrestler I ever wrestled. Like pure wrestler. He was so good.
McGinnis,
he was so good.
McGinnis had a lot of stuff.
Yes.
A lot of my kind of stuff. He had a lot of. Yeah.
He actually, it was great, like wrestling with him as much as I did too, because I actually learned a lot about wrestling, a lot about instead of just pulling on guys' heads and stuff like that. He was so technical. He was incredible.
He was very good.
He was incredible. It was crazy. Wow. But it's the stories of that room, and Terry Brands would always say if the sauna walls could talk.
Oh my God!
I mean, the stories and stuff. I mean, just everything that goes. If the sauna walls could talk.
There were so many good stories.
Yeah. That struck something up too. Give me a good sauna story.
I can't. I'm not really thinking of anything.
I thought.
I can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Royce told me to ask about this. What was the his legend of Roy Salger?
What's that?
Roy Salger.
Roy Salger.
Yes, Roy Salger.
Okay.
I've never heard this story
Okay, so
before.
we're doing I had a Randy Lewis wrestling camp. I had my own camps for a couple summers after I won the Olympics, and we're down in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're staying, or we might have been in Florida. That don't matter, but we're down south somewhere, and we're in the we're staying in the dorm rooms, and Royce went out for a few cocktails and came back and was loud or something like that, and the people we're on some campus that had summer school there or something, and they were gonna arrest Royce or put him in, or they caught Royce doing something, coming in late, making noise or something, I don't know, and so they came and knocked on my door, and I had just got home. I was out with him too that night, and so I had just got home like 5 minutes before that, and I had a few cocktails in me, and they were going, Mr. Lewis, this wrestling guy of yours we caught him doing this and this. And I go, I'll take care of this. I'll handle him. I told them that they, okay, sir, thank you. And they left. And Roy had told them, they had asked him what his name was, and it was Roy Salger. So he says, Roy Salger. So the cops are telling me, Mr. Salger here is causing some trouble. And I said, I'll take care of this. I'll discipline him for this. I'll handle this. So we always go sometimes, Roy Salger. That's his go-to name.
That's his code name?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to end it on this.
Okay.
You actually, I wanted to ask you about this, but because I remember specifically talking to you back when you did this, and you kept telling me, I think it was back like when Mark Perry was there, maybe at Iowa, in that area.
Yeah.
And you're like, none of these guys, I'll go in there and I want to wrestle with them, and none of them want to wrestle me. And so you said, I'm going to come out of retirement. You came out of retirement at what?
Yeah.
How old were you? You were like,
I was 3 weeks before I turned 50.
yeah. And you just came out and said, I'm going to wrestle in the Olympic trials.
I lost 20 pounds, and my body wasn't ready to lose 20 pounds because it was.
What year was this? And what year was this?
Well, let's see. I'm 66 now, so I was 49 then.
Yeah.
It would have been 17 years ago.
Yeah, 17 years ago. So that would have been what? Where were you at when 2017? So 2008? Yeah, ish, somewhere there. If I do it, but anyway, I mean, you were almost 50 years old.
Yeah, I was. It was May of 2000.
Because you went to like
16.
Yeah, because you
2009.
2009. So but it was like you just didn't like go wrestle in a college open. You like literally went and wrestled like in a regional Olympic trials, and beat some good guys. I mean,
yeah. Well, here's what happened though, and I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, what prompted it?
They were supposed to have the weigh-ins. It was a one-day tournament. Mm-hmm. Okay, the weigh-ins were supposed to be at noon. Okay, that's what it was for all these Olympic trials. And I did not find out till 2 days before that they switched the weigh-ins because they had high school kids had a tournament at the same time. They didn't want the officials to have to come weigh us in twice, so they switched our weigh-in to 8 o'clock at night.
Oh. Now,
I'm going to tell you this. This is a good weight cut story, man, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. When I was almost 50 years old, 3 weeks before I was 50, so I'm 49 and basically 50 years old, I was sweating off 9 pounds a day, 9 pounds in a workout. Take me an hour and 15 minutes to lose 9 pounds.
Jeez.
And then I'd do that twice. So I would sweat off like 18 pounds a day for for 3 days. It took me 3 weeks to get down to weight. And so then on that Friday, the tournament was on Saturday, and the weigh-ins were on Friday. And so they switched the weigh-ins from noon till 8 o'clock at night. So that means I had to lose 9 pounds twice because I couldn't. It pissed me off because then I didn't even get to eat a meal because I was so dehydrated. Because I had to sweat off 9 pounds in the morning, and then I gained it all back, and then I had to sweat it off again at 8 o'clock at night. And so then I didn't even get a weigh-in meal that night because I was too dehydrated. I was just drinking. And then I had to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast, and then we wrestled I had a match at 10:15 and 11 o'clock, and then my third match was at 11:30. And I didn't even get to regain my thing, whereas if we'd have weighed in at noon, at 2 o'clock the day before, noon, whatever it was supposed to be, I would have been able to gain all my weight back. I would have been able to gain 15 pounds and weigh like, this is when I wrestled, I cut 20 pounds to make 163.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But I could have, but instead, so then I'm only weighing like 173 the next day because of weighing in at 8 o'clock the night before, and I wasn't able to eat anything. And so if we'd have got to weigh in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I would have weighed 178 by my match, and I would have not. But like I cramped up in every match, and I cramped up. I could barely move, and I could barely walk by my third match. It was hard. My body was cramping up my back. And the first 7 seconds of my match, I wrestled Mozafe.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I cramped. My body was cramping the whole time, and I knew I had no chance against him.
Yeah. So. Wow. Yeah, just to do that at that. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, honestly, that's to compete at that. Yeah, that'd be tough right there.
Well,
sure.
I was that year. I had worked out with a couple guys that were national champions, and I could beat them for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then but then once I got tired, I was like dead.
Yeah.
I couldn't beat anybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And it would happen very fast.
Yeah.
I'd be here, and then it'd be like I fell off a cliff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, just to recover
and every time I wrestled somebody, my body was in pain for like 2 weeks afterwards. So if I wrestled, about once a month, I was coaching the Hawkeye Club during this, but about once a month I'd wrestle with somebody for just a little bit, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and I could not believe how good I could do.
Yeah.
I go, wow.
Well, you remember Lloyd Rogers?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one. I coached him. I was his high school coach, and I love that guy. I mean, he's the best. He's the best. But he loved having you as a coach. By the way, he loved it, but he said, man, he's still got it. I was like, I bet he does.
People in the room saw me wrestling somebody, like national champions. This is when I'm 49 years old.
Yeah.
And beating them for like the first 2 goes. And then I can't go. And I remember, like, I asked Metcalf if he wanted to wrestle one time, and he goes, well, how long? If you can go an hour with me, I'll wrestle with you. I go, hey, I'm 49 years old. I can go 15 minutes with you. I can go 3 5-minute goes or 2 8-minute goes. I can go 15 minutes in 2 or 3 goes, and I'll give you all you want. But he goes, well, I don't want to wrestle if you can't go the whole practice with me. I go, well, you know what? You know how long matches are now? They're 6 minutes. I can go 1 match with you. How about we just do that then? But he didn't.
No.
Wow. So, anyways.
Always be a legend. Always. I said you'll always be a legend. No question about it.
I believe that.
Yeah. And we're going to end it on that right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Deservedly so.
Oh, my man. Any last words, Blue Boo?
Okay, just, you know what? Enjoy wrestling and enjoy life.
Yep.
and work to win. But you know what? Put on a show, make people remember you.
Yep. And you have most certainly done so, my man. Listen,
so.
I'm very, very blessed not only to have you on this podcast, but you were literally one of the very first guests that I wanted to have on. I'm very, very proud to just call you a friend and all these years. And man, I was so looking forward to this, and it most certainly didn't disappoint. So there he is, ladies and gentlemen, the great one himself, Mr. Randy Lewis. Lou, we appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.